Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're new or have been with me from the start, get ready for stories filled with emotion, romance and powerful journeys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the family, because together, we're diving deep into unforgettable tales that touch the heart and soul. Let's get started. The halls of Westbridge Memorial buzzed with urgency, the controlled chaos that only the best hospitals could carry with grace. Dr. Regina Halland walked with purpose, her white coat billowing as her shoes clicked across the polished marble floors. Her team followed behind, their eyes scanning patient files, their trust in her unshakable. Regina had built this world, respect, recognition, and a reputation as one of the most gifted heart surgeons in the country. She didn't just save lives, she gave people reasons to keep living. But that morning, the world she'd built with sweat and sacrifice began to crumble. Two federal agents stood waiting outside the operating theater. She spotted them immediately, their suits, their hard stares, the stern set of their jaws. Her heart skipped. Something was off. Dr. Regina Halland, one of them said as she exited surgery. Yes, you're under arrest for medical fraud and involvement in illegal organ trafficking. Please place your hands where we can see them. Gasps echoed from nurses and interns. Her scalpel fell to the floor, clinking against the tile as silence swallowed the corridor. Regina stood frozen. This has to be a mistake, she whispered. The agents turned her around, cuffed her hands behind her back, and led her down the hall like a common criminal. Phones recorded, cameras flashed, and her colleagues stood rooted, disbelief etched on their faces. The woman they admired, who'd saved countless lives, was now being paraded out like a criminal. In the interrogation room, they laid out the accusations. Documents with her forged signature, authorizing unauthorized organ transfers, emails from her account negotiating with black market buyers, her access card being used during hours. She wasn't even at the hospital. I didn't do any of this, Regina said, trembling. Check the security footage. Ask my team. There's a mistake. But the footage was corrupted. Her assistant, Daniel Monroe, testified she had given him instructions to move certain unregistered specimens. Her digital trail, according to the agents, was airtight. She felt herself spiraling. None of it made sense. She'd devoted her entire career to saving lives. Why would she risk it all for something so monstrous? By the time they finished questioning her, the world outside had already decided her guilt. Social media headlines screamed, "Respected heart surgeon turns butcher." News anchors replayed her walk of shame on loop. That night she sat alone in a cold, fluorescent-lit jail cell, stripped of her scrubs, dignity and peace. A few days later, they told her the medical board had voted unanimously. Her license was revoked pending trial. Her defense lawyer, a tired, overworked public defender named Keon Wallace, barely had time to review her case before court dates started filling the calendar. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, it did. She heard footsteps approaching the visiting area. Behind the thick glass panel sat a man she hadn't seen in a week, her husband, Carter Halland. She sat heart-aching. Thank God you came. I need you now more than ever. Carter's face was expressionless, cold, almost disgusted. Carter. He exhaled and slid a document through the partition. Divorce papers. Regina's chest tightened. I don't understand. You know exactly why. I told you not to get too high and mighty in that hospital. And now look. His voice was sharp. I can't be part of this circus, Regina. You brought shame on my name. Tears brimmed in her eyes. You don't believe me either? I don't know what to believe, he said. But I do know I'm not going down with you. He stood and walked away without another word. Regina stared at the papers, her vision blurring. Everything she thought was solid. Her marriage, her name, her purpose was dissolving. Meanwhile, across the prison complex in the visitation wing, another drama unfolded. Jeff Charleston sat across from his sister Janelle, a tired woman whose once vibrant smile had dimmed after years of fighting addiction. She wore the same orange jumpsuit Regina now wore. This is the last time I come here, Janelle, Jeff said, rubbing his temples. I can't keep doing this. Rehab, relapse, rehab, arrest, it never ends. Janelle fidgeted, her eyes hollow. You don't mean that. I do, he said, voice cracking. You need to face the consequences this time. No more lawyers. No more bailouts. Suddenly Jeff's words slurred. He blinked rapidly, reaching for the table as his body swayed. His face turned pale, drenched in sweat. Then, like a building collapsing in slow motion, he dropped to the floor. A guard screamed, "Man down!" In a twist of fate. Regina was being escorted back from visitation when she saw the commotion. Through the bars, she spotted the man convulsing. "Move," she yelled to the guard. "He's going into cardiac arrest." The guard hesitated. "You can't. I'm a doctor," she barked. "I can help him. But if he dies because you waited, that's on you." Moments later, Jeff lay flat in the infirmary. Regina hovered over him, chest rising and falling in sharp breaths, as she assessed him with nothing but gauze, a worn stethoscope, and a cracked oxygen mask. His heart was fluttering into arrhythmia. He was going fast. "Roll him," she ordered. "I need something sharp now. Scalpel, pen, anything." A nurse handed her a sterile razor blade. With precision born of years in the ER, she made a small incision and relieved the pressure around his heart. Seconds passed like hours. Then he gasped. Jeff's eyelids fluttered open. He stared at the blurry figure above him. "You're gonna be okay," Regina whispered, sweat running down her face. "You're not dying today." Later that night, in a private hospital room, Jeff's personal physician stood beside his bed. "You were minutes from dying," the doctor said. "Whoever saved you. They're the reason you're alive." Jeff swallowed hard. "Who was it?" "She's a prisoner. Dr. Regina Halland." Jeff's eyebrows furrowed. "Halland? The one all over the news?" His doctor nodded. "Say what you want about her case, but medically. That woman's a genius." Back in her cell, Regina sat against the concrete wall, cradling her knees. She felt hollow. Saving someone's life didn't change her reality. She was still a suspect, still broken, still alone. And yet, something shifted. Because a man named Jeff Charleston had opened his eyes that day because of her. And whether she knew it or not, fate had just connected their hearts in a way neither could escape. The sky above Westbridge Prison turned an ashen gray, matching the mood in Regina's cell. That morning she had saved a man's life. A billionaire, no less. But there were no awards, no news crews. No applause, just silence. Metal bars and concrete walls. The infirmary had offered her a stale sandwich afterward, a pat on the back, and then returned her to her cell like nothing happened. She hadn't saved him for praise, but the indifference stung. In another life, she would have been carried down the hall on the shoulders of interns, showered in roses, handed a plaque. Now she sat on a steel bench in orange scrubs, heart thudding quietly against ribs that had grown used to disappointment. But Jeff Charleston hadn't forgotten. "Are you sure?" he asked his doctor again the next morning, sitting upright in bed, IV lines in his arms. "She saved you," the doctor confirmed. She had no equipment, no support, just instinct and skill. Jeff stared out the window, mind racing. He had come to visit his sister. Instead, he'd nearly died, saved not by his private team of physicians, but by an inmate with a reputation shredded by scandal. Regina Halland. Later that afternoon, he made arrangements. The prison administration was hesitant. After all, visitation was a privilege. But Jeff Charleston wasn't just anybody. Regina, meanwhile, had given up trying to explain her innocence. She had stopped fighting with the guards. Even her cellmate, a woman named Trina who sold stolen credit cards online, gave her space now. Regina kept her head low, spent her days reading old medical journals or scribbling, notes on napkins, trying to keep her mind sharp, trying to finish the research she'd started on CAD, the disease that had taken her father. But when the guard called her name that afternoon and said she had a visitor, she stood in confusion. "I'm not expecting anyone." "Yeah, well," the guard grunted. "He's not exactly on your contact list either." The visitation room buzzed with voices, glass panels separating loved ones from inmates. And there he was, Jeff Charleston, alive, sitting in a navy cashmere coat, his eyes fixed on the door, as if he were waiting for something he wasn't sure he'd find. Regina took her seat across from him. There was silence at first. Two very different lives, separated by a thick panel of glass and the weight of too much pain. "You shouldn't be here," Regina finally said. "On the contrary," Jeff replied softly. "I should have come sooner." She didn't respond. I wanted to thank you, he added. My doctor told me everything. You saved my life. Regina nodded once. It's what I was trained to do. Doesn't matter where I am, you had nothing. You still acted. That takes guts. Regina met his gaze then. You don't owe me anything. Mr. Charleston, call me Jeff. Fine, Jeff, you're welcome. Now you can go back to your world. This one, it's not yours. Jeff studied her. She was strong, guarded. But something in her eyes flickered. Weariness, pride, grief. He leaned closer. Why are you in here, Regina? She exhaled. Because someone decided I was easier to destroy than to outshine. You didn't do it? Her jaw tightened. No, but I can't prove that. Jeff leaned back, folding his hands. Maybe you just haven't had the right people trying. She tilted her head. What's that supposed to mean? He smiled faintly. It means I'm not just a guy you saved. I'm someone who believes in paying debts, and I have resources. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's truth. I believe you. And I want to help you find what they buried. For a moment, Regina's eyes filled with something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in weeks. Hope. But she shook her head quickly. The system's already decided. The media's painted me as some monster. My license is gone. My name is trash. My husband served me divorce papers. There's nothing left to save. Jeff's expression turned serious. That may be true, except for one thing. What? You? She blinked. You're still here. Still thinking. Still fighting. That's enough. Regina didn't respond, but her hands trembled as she placed the receiver down. Their eyes locked one last time before the guard motioned her away. The next day, Jeff met with his lawyers and made a call to a private investigation firm he trusted with high-stakes cases. He hired not one, but 10 investigators. I want everything, he told them. Bank records, hospital logs, email servers, surveillance. I don't care what it costs. Who's the target? One of them asked. He held up a photo of Regina. She's not the target. She's the truth. Meanwhile, back in the prison, Regina was called into the medical unit. Janelle Charleston had been transferred to her wing, suffering severe withdrawal. She was vomiting, shaking, burning with fever. The prison nurse seemed overwhelmed, and Regina instinctively stepped in. I can help, she said, tying back her hair. Let me help her. She's the billionaire's sister, right? The nurse muttered. You two got a thing now. I'm a doctor, Regina snapped. And she's in pain. That's all that matters. For the next 3 days, Regina monitored Janelle, kept her hydrated, massaged her pressure points, and whispered calming words when the hallucinations came. Janelle clung to her like a lifeline, and in those long nights something softened between them. You're not what they say you are, Janelle croaked on the 3rd night. Regina looked down at her. Neither are you. Janelle smiled weakly. My brother, he doesn't trust easy, but if he's coming here for you, that means something. I don't want his pity. It's not pity, Janelle murmured. It's something else. I can feel it. Regina said nothing, but deep inside her chest something stirred. A whisper, a warmth, something she had buried beneath fear and betrayal. Not love, not yet, but possibility. 1 week later, Jeff returned to the prison. He waited in the visiting booth, but this time Regina walked in calmer, stronger. You're really committed to these visits, huh? She said, picking up the receiver. I've committed to bigger mistakes, Jeff replied, grinning. What do you want, Jeff? I want you to know. We're getting close. Regina raised an eyebrow. One of my investigators tracked down your assistant, Daniel Monroe. He's gone off-grid, quit his job, took a large deposit the day before your arrest. Her breath caught. That's not enough. We're not stopping, Jeff said. We're going to find him. And when we do, we'll unravel everything. Silence settled between them. The air was electric, heavy with unspoken things, grief, gratitude, something more. I should warn you, Regina said quietly. Being seen with me, it's bad for your image. Jeff chuckled. Let them talk. They already are. I saw a headline in the cafeteria newspaper. Billionaire wooed by prison doctor. Jeff smirked. Could be worse. Regina rolled her eyes. Could it? Yes, he said, voice dropping into something softer. They could be right. She stared at him. And for the first time in weeks, her lips curved into a smile. Not because she was free, but because she wasn't alone anymore. The glow of the afternoon sun pierced through the high, dusty windows of Westbridge Prison, casting long, amber streaks across the concrete floor. Regina sat on the edge of her cot, flipping through a tattered medical notebook. Her hands worked methodically, making notes about her research on cardiomyopathic autoimmune disorder, CAD. Even behind bars, she couldn't abandon her father's legacy. He'd died from the illness, and her unfinished work on a cure haunted her more than the bars around her. But her thoughts weren't solely on medicine anymore. Not since Jeff Charleston had entered her life. Since his visits began, a flicker of something had returned to her eyes. Defiance, curiosity, even warmth. But she reminded herself, this man lived in a world of privilege and power, one she no longer belonged to. Still, every time he walked through those prison gates, she found herself holding her breath. Jeff, meanwhile, was a man torn in two. At home, his empire wobbled. The media vultures circled relentlessly. Headlines like Charleston's new heartthrob, prison doctor or gold digger dominated the gossip blogs. Investors started whispering. The board called an emergency meeting. And yet, Jeff didn't back down. He doubled down. 10 investigators, all working in tandem, were chasing leads around the clock. One found Daniel Monroe's last known location, an apartment in Chicago. Another tracked suspicious bank deposits into an offshore account. Each day, the net tightened around the people who had framed Regina. And while the world judged him for falling for an inmate, Jeff couldn't bring himself to care. He found himself watching the prison visitation schedule, wondering when he'd see her again, what she'd say next, how her voice would soften when she said his name. But love wasn't the only storm he was navigating. His sister, Janelle, was hanging by a thread. Her withdrawals had passed, but recovery was still fragile, and her first visitor was him. They sat across from each other in the facility's garden, surrounded by weathered benches and sunflowers growing defiantly through the cracks in the cement. "I'm sorry, Jeff," Janelle said softly, fiddling with a loose string on her sleeve. "I know," he answered, "but this time sorry doesn't fix it." She looked up at him, eyes clearer than they'd been in years. "I didn't want to go to jail," she said, "but now I think I needed it. Meeting Regina, she treated me like a person, not a problem. She never even asked who I was." Jeff leaned forward. "She didn't save just me. She saved you too." Janelle nodded. "And I don't want to mess that up." He smiled, pain flashing behind his eyes. "Then don't." Meanwhile, in the heart of Westbridge's law library, Regina sat cross-legged on the cold tile floor, digging through criminal case studies. Her public defender, Keon Wallace, had dropped off, a mountain of paperwork to review before the upcoming pretrial hearing. She rubbed her temples, exhausted. Her trial date loomed. The prosecution had built a solid case. All the digital footprints pointed to her, login records, email approvals, time-stamped files, and Daniel Monroe, still missing. She couldn't fight this alone. So when the guard told her Jeff had returned for another visit, she didn't hesitate. He sat on the other side of the glass, his face tired but determined. "You look like you haven't slept," she said as she picked up the phone. He chuckled. "Neither have you." She smirked. "Prison life has that effect. I've got news," he said. "We found something." One of the investigators got access to a second set of server logs from the hospital's old IT system. It shows that your assistant, Daniel, used a cloned keycard to access the storage wing at 3:42 a.m., the night the organs went missing. "Not you." Her heart skipped. "That could be the evidence I need." Jeff nodded. "We're not done yet. There's more." A wire transfer was made to Daniel's account 2 days before your arrest. From a dummy company, one that's linked to a black market syndicate based out of Miami. She sat silent, stunned. "Regina, someone didn't just frame you," Jeff said, his voice low and fierce. "They orchestrated this from the inside. They wanted you out of the way." Her throat tightened. "Why me?" He hesitated. "Maybe your research, maybe your position, or maybe just because you made it too far in a system that doesn't like women like you rising too high." Her eyes welled with tears. For the first time, someone had said it aloud. Not just injustice, but targeted destruction. "I've fought my whole life," she whispered, "to get out of the neighborhood. To earn that white coat, I never thought I'd have to fight just to keep my name clean. Jeff pressed a hand to the glass. You're not alone anymore. She looked at his hand, then up into his eyes. The connection between them hummed like a current, silent but undeniable. But outside those walls, the world was growing louder. The media had caught wind of the frequent visits. One tabloid published a photo of Jeff, leaving Westbridge with the caption, "Billionaire falls for convict. Is his heart in danger?" That afternoon, Charleston Enterprises stock dropped 9%. Board members called for Jeff's temporary removal. Competitors circled like sharks. His PR team begged him to cut ties, to focus on image, on damage control. But Jeff refused. Instead, he held a press conference. He stood in front of microphones, cameras flashing, journalists shouting. "I am fully aware of the media storm," he said. "Yes, I've been visiting Dr. Regina Halland. And yes, I believe in her innocence. More importantly, I believe in her character. She saved my life. She's saving my sister's. And if you call that a scandal, then maybe you're the ones who need to look in the mirror." The room fell silent. Some cheered. Others rolled their eyes. But Regina, watching the clip from a grainy prison TV, sat frozen. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wasn't used to people fighting for her, especially not men like Jeff. A few days later, during her hearing, Jeff sat in the gallery beside Janelle, who now walked straighter, cleaner, with light returning to her skin. Regina entered the courtroom in shackles, but her gaze was steady. The DA's office tried to object to the new evidence. But Jeff's team, working alongside, Keon, had built a mountain of undeniable proof. Emails traced back to Daniel. Login times that clashed with Regina's verified whereabouts. Surveillance showing the mystery man, later identified as a known associate of a black market surgeon, meeting Daniel near the hospital loading dock. By the time the judge dismissed the hearing for a recess, the courtroom buzzed with whispers of doubt, not about Regina's innocence, but about how she was ever accused in the first place. Back in holding, Regina was silent. She should have felt relief. But all she could feel was the overwhelming truth that something had shifted, not just her case, but her heart. Later that night, Jeff returned for one more visit. He didn't say much, just stared at her with eyes full of unspoken promises. "I never asked you why," she said finally. "Why are you doing all this?" He leaned forward, voice soft. "Because when I woke up that day in the infirmary, the first face I saw wasn't my doctor's, it wasn't my sister's. It was yours. I'm not who I used to be." "I don't want who you used to be," he replied. "I want who you are now." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric, emotional, filled with a kind of reverence that words couldn't touch. "I don't know if I can give you anything," she whispered. "My life's still a mess," Jeff smiled. "Then let me help you clean it up." Her eyes softened. And for the first time her voice broke when she said his name. "Jeff." The garden outside Westbridge Women's Facility was quiet, still bathed in the dull glow of morning light. The grass was patchy and the benches were rusted, but to Janelle Charleston it was a sanctuary. A fragile one, but a sanctuary nonetheless. She sat with a book on her lap, her fingers idly brushing the pages, but her eyes weren't reading. They were watching the woman across the courtyard, Regina Halland, dressed in the same orange jumpsuit, walking slowly, head down, deep in thought. Janelle knew what was happening. She had lived through pain, addiction, detox, and regret, but something about the way Regina moved, it wasn't just survival. It was a quiet war being fought inside her soul. And for the first time in years, Janelle didn't feel alone in her struggle. It had been 2 weeks since her withdrawal began. 2 weeks since Regina stayed by her side day and night. When the guards barely did more than toss water through the door, Regina cleaned her when she vomited, held her when she shook, sang softly when the nightmares came. Janelle owed her more than her life. She owed her clarity. Jeff leaned back in the leather chair of his Manhattan office, reading yet another headline on his tablet. Charleston's fortune sinks with prison romance scandal. Investors pull out over inmate affair. Is love worth billions? He tossed the tablet across the desk, jaw tightening. Another call came in from the board. Another shareholder threatening to withdraw. His assistant walked in nervously, carrying documents he had no interest in reading. But when the call came from his lead investigator, Jeff answered before the first ring finished. "We got him," the voice said on the other end. "Daniel Monroe, Chicago, Motel 6. He tried to use a fake ID. Jeff sat upright. "Is he talking? He will. We found the transfer logs, burner phone numbers, email drafts with timestamps. We've got the black market broker who paid him. And we've got the proof that none of this connects to Regina Halland, except through forgery." Jeff stood, his chest tightening. "Send it all to Regina's lawyer. And double-check, this is airtight. As airtight as it gets." Jeff didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He only exhaled and whispered, "It's not over until she's free." Back in Westbridge, Regina sat in the corner of the chapel, staring up at the broken stained glass window above the altar. It was missing pieces, fragments of color lost to time and carelessness. She found it strangely poetic. She felt broken too. But lately, she'd begun to realize that broken didn't mean useless. Sometimes light shone best through cracks. "Mind if I join you?" came a soft voice. Regina turned to see Janelle smiling gently. "Sure," Regina said, moving over. Janelle sat beside her. "You know, you've done more for me in here than anyone has on the outside." Regina shrugged. "You just needed someone to believe in you." Janelle smiled. "Funny, that's what Jeff said about you." Regina froze slightly. "You know," Janelle continued, "I've never seen my brother like this. He's always been cold, controlled. But now when he talks about you, there's fire in his voice. Like he's alive again." Regina looked down. "He's risking everything. The media, the board, his company. He's not doing it out of guilt, I know. He's doing it because somewhere between that infirmary and now, he fell for you." Regina turned to her. "Do you think it's real?" "I've known my brother my whole life," Janelle said. "And he's never once looked at someone like you." Regina felt her throat tighten. "I'm afraid, Janelle. What if I can't give him what he needs? What if the world never lets me live this down?" Janelle placed a hand on hers. "Then let the world scream. Just don't let it drown your heartbeat." That night, Regina was called into the visitor room again. She didn't expect to see Jeff pacing restlessly on the other side, documents clutched in his hands. When he saw her, he lit up like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "I have it," he said before she could even sit down. "All of it, the evidence, the confessions, the bank transfers, surveillance footage. Daniel's signature matches the forged documents. It's all here." Regina's hand went to her mouth, eyes widening. "I turned it over to your lawyer this morning. There's going to be a motion filed tomorrow. You could be out of here in days." She couldn't speak. Emotion swelled in her chest until it felt like she might drown in it. She pressed her hand to the glass, and without hesitation, Jeff pressed his against hers. "I told you I'd help clean it up," he whispered. Tears fell silently down her cheeks. "Why, Jeff? Why did you fight so hard?" He looked into her eyes, voice steady and soft. "Because when you saved my life, I think you gave me more than a second chance. You gave me something I didn't know I needed." Regina wiped her tears and whispered, "You gave me something too." A pause, thick, electric. "What?" Jeff asked, barely breathing. "Hope." The next day, the courtroom was packed. News vans surrounded the courthouse. Protesters outside waved signs, some calling her a hero, others still clinging to the scandal. Inside, Regina stood, tall in her jumpsuit, as her lawyer presented the motion to dismiss all charges. The prosecution resisted, but the evidence spoke louder. Footage showed Daniel accessing restricted areas. Bank records showed bribes. The black market broker, under pressure, turned state's witness. After a short recess, the judge returned with the verdict. All charges against Dr. Regina Halland are hereby dropped. The court offers a formal apology for the wrongful accusation and detention. Dr. Halland is free to go. Cheers erupted from the back. Regina staggered slightly, overcome. Her knees buckled, but Jeff was already there, catching her before she fell. She looked up at him through tears. "I'm free?" He nodded. "You're free." They walked out into the light together. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust in their faces. But Regina didn't stop walking. Not until they reached Jeff's car, not until she turned to face him fully. "What happens now?" she asked. Jeff smiled. "Whatever you want to happen." Her eyes searched his, scared but open. "I don't want to waste time," she said. "I want to live. Then live with me." She blinked. "Jeff, I'm not asking for perfect. Just Start with me. Start now. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't loud, or rushed, or dramatic. It was soft, grateful, real. And in that moment, Regina wasn't the disgraced doctor or the miracle inmate. She was just a woman, finally choosing love. The wind tugged gently at the edge of Regina's coat as she stepped out of the courthouse, her feet landing on the sidewalk like a woman reborn. Reporters swarmed. Flashbulbs burst like lightning. Microphones were thrust toward her face as voices shouted questions. Accusations, apologies. Dr. Halland, how does it feel to be free? Do you blame the justice system? Is it true you and Jeff Charleston are in a relationship? Regina blinked into the chaos, disoriented by the shift from cement walls to open air. She hadn't seen the sky without bars in almost 6 months. It was overwhelming. Then came his hand, Jeff's, reaching through the noise, steady and strong. She took it without hesitation. He didn't say a word, just led her through the crowd and into the sleek black SUV waiting at the curb. As the doors shut behind them, the world faded. The silence between them was comforting, sacred. She stared out the window, tears slipping down her cheeks. Not from sadness, but from the shock of release. I still don't believe it, she whispered. I really thought I'd die in there. Jeff's voice was low, reverent. Not on my watch. She turned to him. You saved me. I just returned the favor. A silence passed. Then slowly, Regina reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Crinkled, smudged with age. It was all she'd been able to take with her from the prison library. What's that? Jeff asked. My notes, she said softly. For a drug that could treat CAD. I never stopped working on it. Jeff leaned in, reading the elegant scribbles. You did this. In prison I had time, and I couldn't stop thinking about my father. He died from this. I swore I'd finish what I started. He looked up at her, admiration in his eyes. Then let me fund the rest. Regina's breath caught. Jeff, I mean it, he said. Let's start a research wing in your name. We'll hire the best scientists. Find clinical trial partners, publish the findings. Whatever you need. For the first time since her arrest, she felt powerful again. Not because someone gave her power, but because someone believed in hers. And then came a knock on the window. The car door opened and Janelle climbed in, her smile bright, her arms opening wide. Hey, hero, she said, embracing Regina. Regina hugged her back, full of warmth. You look good. I feel good, Janelle said. Thanks to you. Thanks to yourself, Regina corrected her. You did the work. Janelle beamed. Well, I figured if you could survive hell with grace, I could survive detox with a little cussing. They all laughed, and for a brief moment nothing else existed. Not the media storm, not the lingering scars, just 3 people who had made it through the fire, standing in the embers finally free. A week later, headlines across the country flipped like a switch. Dr. Regina, Halland cleared of all charges. Medical license reinstated. Billionaire backs wrongfully accused surgeons break through drug research. The woman who saved a life, a system, and a reputation. In the months that followed, Jeff made good on every word. He funded the Halland Center for Cardiac Research, built on the 22nd floor of the Charleston Biomedical Tower. Regina was reinstated by the medical board. After an emotional standing ovation hearing, her research was fast-tracked for FDA approval, and the drug, based on her prison notes, was named Mavell, in honor of her late mother, Mary Velma Halland. Doctors across the country hailed it as a potential game-changer. For those suffering from CAD, lives were being saved, again by her hands, her mind, her heart. Still, not everything was easy. Media coverage of her and Jeff's relationship became relentless. Headlines ranged from supportive to cruel, power couple or pity project. Prison princess marries into wealth. Is Jeff Charleston sacrificing his legacy for love? Regina had to steel herself with every public appearance. Even inside the medical community there were whispers, but Jeff never wavered. Whenever she hesitated, he would say, "Let them watch. You're still going to rise." And rise she did. Still, there was one thing left unfinished. Love, not just the deep, private bond they shared behind closed doors, but the public declaration. The vow that they belonged to no one but each other, regardless of past privilege or pain. One morning in early spring, Jeff took her to Central Park, to the spot where he used to walk with Janelle when she was clean. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, cherry blossoms dancing on the wind. They strolled in silence until he stopped beside a bench. "You saved my sister," he said. "You saved me." "You saved yourself." "But there's one more thing I want you to save." Regina tilted her head. "What's that?" He dropped to one knee. Her hands flew to her mouth. Jeff pulled out a simple velvet box, and inside was a gold band, not flashy, not loud, just elegant, just honest. "My heart," he whispered. "Save my heart, not because you have to, but because you already did." Tears spilled over. "You're serious?" she breathed. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She nodded, laughing through tears. "Yes, yes." He stood, slipped the ring on her finger, and pulled her into his arms. Around them, strangers clapped. Cameras flashed. The world spun. But to Regina, nothing else mattered. Just his heartbeat, and hers, aligned at last. Their wedding was small. Close friends, Janelle officiated. Regina wore a simple white dress, off the shoulder, her curls framing her face like a halo. Jeff wore navy, his eyes never leaving her as she walked down the aisle. When they kissed, it wasn't just the union of two people in love. It was the victory of truth over lies, of healing over harm, of grace over judgment. The media called it controversial. Her patients called it deserved. And he called her my wife, Dr. Regina Charleston. On the first morning of their honeymoon, she woke early and found Jeff on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the ocean. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, wrapping herself in a robe. He turned to her, smiling. "Didn't want to waste a moment." She leaned into him, placing her hand over his heart. "I can still hear it," she whispered. "What? Your heartbeat? It's stronger now." He looked into her eyes, because it finally found its home. The first day back in the operating room was unlike anything Regina had imagined. Everything looked the same. Blue scrubs, white lights, the rhythmic beeping of monitors. But she was not the same woman who once walked those sterile halls. Every step was heavier with memory, yet lighter with freedom. Every glance from her colleagues, once suspicious, was now filled with awe, curiosity or guilt. As she scrubbed in, her eyes met her reflection in the mirror. She saw resilience etched into her face. Her lips curled slightly. "Welcome back, Dr. Halland," she whispered to herself. Correction, Dr. Regina Charleston. The name still felt new on her tongue, but the love behind it was solid as stone. She had gone through fire and come out gold. Scarred, yes, but glowing. As the surgical team entered the OR, silence fell. One of the younger nurses whispered, "She's really back." Like a miracle had entered the room. Regina adjusted her gloves, gave the team a confident nod, and said, "Let's save a life." And just like that, she was home. That evening, Regina returned to the Charleston estate, a sprawling modern mansion filled with art. Plants and warmth, yet not ostentatious. Jeff had insisted they keep it real, keep it grounded. He wanted their life to reflect who she was. Intelligent, humble, brave. The sun was setting over the private garden Jeff had designed for her. In the center was a marble sculpture of a heart, encased in vines, symbolizing how beauty can bloom from brokenness. Regina often sat near it, writing, dreaming. Janelle joined her there that night, sober, glowing, and now training to be a counselor for recovering addicts. Janelle plopped onto the garden bench beside her sister-in-law. "I had this crazy thought last night," she began. "Oh," Regina raised an eyebrow. "I used to think my life was over. Every rehab, every arrest. But now I wake up every day knowing I have a purpose. And you gave me that." Regina turned to her. "No, Janelle. You gave you that. I was just the reminder." They both laughed, and Janelle hugged her fiercely. "You're gonna change the world, Regina." "I already did," Regina smiled softly. "Yours, mine, Jeff's." Later that week, they held a press conference to announce the official FDA approval of Marvel, the revolutionary drug Regina had developed behind bars. It was to be held at the new Halland Charleston Institute for Heart Health, where patients across the country would receive affordable cardiac care, especially those underserved or uninsured. As Regina stepped onto the stage, applause thundered from the audience. She stood tall in a fitted navy suit, natural curls cascading over her shoulders, and looked out into the crowd, journalists, researchers, former patients, and women who had written her letters from prison, women who saw in her a symbol of what was still possible. Jeff stood in the front row, eyes locked on hers like she was the sun and he was the sky. Regina took a breath. "I was once called a criminal," she began. "A fraud, a disgrace to medicine. But the truth doesn't die even when the world buries it. The truth grows stronger in silence, and when it finally speaks, it sings louder than injustice." The room was still. She continued, voice unwavering. "This drug isn't just science. It's survival. For everyone who's been told they're not worth saving. I dedicate it to my father, who died before I could save him, to the women in prison who taught me courage, and to the man who stood by me when I was at my worst." Jeff's eyes shone. "And now," she said with a smile, "I dedicate it to the future." The world began to see her differently, not as the woman wrongly accused, but as a pioneer, a healer, a voice for the voiceless. She was invited to speak at universities, medical panels, even a United Nations conference on healthcare justice. Oprah requested an interview. Time magazine put her on the cover with the headline, "The Doctor Who Prescribed Truth." Despite the fame, Regina kept her days simple. She woke early, meditated, operated on Tuesdays and Thursdays, mentored young black girls who dreamed of medicine, spent Fridays baking banana bread with Janelle, who was flourishing in her new role helping others. And every Sunday Jeff cooked dinner. His grilled salmon had become a family favorite. They talked about kids sometimes. Not yet, they'd say, but soon. For now their love was enough. They traveled to Ghana, to Italy, to a small town in Tennessee, where Jeff said he first learned how to be kind. And wherever they went, people recognized her. Some whispered, some cried, some just touched her hand and thanked her. She never got used to it, but she welcomed it. Because it wasn't about fame, it was about redemption. On the one-year anniversary of her release, Jeff surprised her with a night under the stars. He rented out a rooftop observatory in New York City and had it decorated with string lights, candles, and a violinist playing Regina's favorite song. At last, by Etta James, they danced slowly, barefoot, her head on his chest. "I never thought life could be this beautiful," she whispered. "It wasn't," Jeff said. "Until you," she laughed gently, lifting her eyes to his. "How did we get here?" He kissed her forehead. "You saved me. And I refuse to let the world forget that." A shooting star streaked across the sky. "Make a wish," he whispered. She closed her eyes, held him tighter. "I already have everything I ever wished for," she murmured. They stood in silence, hearts beating in sync, no longer fugitives of fate, but architects of a future they both chose. The next morning, headlines changed once again. Dr. Regina Charleston, a legacy of love, medicine, and redemption. Charleston. Foundation to open 10 clinics across the U.S. under her direction. Love after injustice, the couple, who rewrote the narrative. In one of her last interviews before taking a sabbatical, Regina was asked, "After everything you've been through, do you forgive the people who hurt you?" She paused, then smiled. "I didn't fight to stay bitter. I fought to stay better." And with that, Dr. Regina Charleston walked away from the cameras, hand in hand with her husband, toward a life she had earned, not just by surviving, but by loving and healing and refusing to be silenced. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel. Your likes, comments, and shares mean the world to me. I couldn't do this without you, and I'm truly grateful to have such an amazing community. Stay tuned for more stories that inspire, move, and entertain. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being part of this journey. Vintage Mike Tales.